This morning, Deacon Brian Chevalier was supposed to be here, but he had a death in the family, so if you could pray for him. So our gospel says to have mercy. So I want you to have mercy on me today when I want to tell you this story about how we found the actual relics of St. Anne. Very interesting. And as I tell it, and of course this is tradition, okay? As I tell it, I want you to see it in your mind as I'm telling you this story. It's very, very interesting. So as the story goes, 14 years after our Lord's death, Mary Magdalene, Martha, and Lazarus, and a few others were piled into a boat without sails or oars and pushed out to the sea to perish during the persecution of the Christians by the Jews of Jerusalem. Now on the boat were the remains of St. Anne, for they feared it would be profaned in the destruction which Jesus had told them would come upon Jerusalem. They were careful to bring with them the tender, loved body of Our Lady's mother. Miraculously, their boat survived and drifted to the shores of France, quite a long way. And this is where the group of saints buried St. Anne's body in a cave in a place called Apt, A-P-T, which is in the south of France. The church, which was later built over that spot, fell into decay because of wars and religious persecution. And as the centuries passed, the place of St. Anne's tomb was forgotten. With the long years of peace, though, that King Charlemagne enabled, the people could now rebuild a magnificent new church on the site of the old chapel at Apt. Painstaking labor went into the new building, and when the day of its consecration arrived, which was on Easter Sunday, 792, almost 800 years later, Charlemagne the king had no idea what was in store for him. At the most solemn part of the ceremony, a boy of 14, blind, deaf, and dumb from birth, to the amazement of those who knew him, completely distracted the attention of the entire congregation by becoming suddenly, tremendously excited. He rose from his seat, walked up the aisle to the altar steps, and to the surprise of the whole church, struck his stick again and again upon the single step. His embarrassed family tried to lead him out, but he would not move. He continued to frantically pound the step, trying to relay a message. All the people looked to the emperor and said, and he, the emperor, apparently inspired by God, took the matter into his own hands. He called the workmen to remove the steps. A subterranean passage was revealed directly below the spot where the boy's stick had indicated. The king, the priests, and the boy went down into it. They made their way in the dim light of candles and came upon a wall that blocked further advance. The boy signed that this also should be removed. And when the wall fell, it was brought to view still another long corridor. And at the end of this, they found a crypt. And to their amazement, they found 2 vigil lights still burning. Amazing. As they stood before the vigil lights, it suddenly went out, and the deaf, dumb, and blind boy was healed, and he immediately began to cry out, "It is she, it is she." The crypt at last was open, and a casket was found within it. In the casket was a winding sheet, and in that were the relics, and upon the relics was an inscription that read, "Here lies the body of St. Anne, Mother of the Glorious Virgin Mary." The winding sheet was noted to be of Eastern design and texture. King Charlemagne and all those there remained a long time in prayer. The emperor had an exact and detailed account of the miraculous finding drawn up by a notary and sent to Pope Adrian with an accompanied letter from himself. These documents and the Pope's reply are preserved to this day. And as you can see, my wife's got printed out some pictures over there of the actual church, the Cathedral of St. Anne in southern France. You can see where the They went right under the altar where they dug and found the crypt. There's an actual copy of the letters from the king to the pope and the pope to the king. And the actual first steps they found. Very interesting. If you have time at the end, go by and look at that. Many papal bulls have attested over and over again to the genuineness of St. Anne's relics at Apt. Countless cures and conversion have taken place at the shrine, where the greater part of the relics is still reposed. St. Anne was privileged to be the mother of God and the instrument of the Immaculate Conception. Probably the most amazing thing that's ever happened, the Immaculate Conception, right there in St. Anne's womb. So I asked myself, if St. Anne was to show up here today in person, knowing the heartache that many grandparents feel for their children, what advice would she give us? First, she would tell us that God is still their Father and He's still in control. And at some point, we need to talk less to our kids about God and start talking more to God about our kids. And if you're going to bring up God with your kids, tell them your story. Tell them some personal story of yours and how you would never have made it through without God. Tell them your story, how He is your peace in times of trouble, and then just leave it alone. Look for opportunities to say what God is doing in your life now, and keep it short, let it land, and leave it, and don't say anything else. Works every time. We plant the seed, and we let God do the rest. So, on another note, this just in from the Vatican.